Do you want to say anything about delays, reverbs? You usually have stuff like that in the session from the rough mix, but do you have do you have just off the top sort of standard stuff you like?
Yeah,
I think we like the same stuff.
I have the Liquid Sonics Seventh Heaven.
It's great.
I like the Sunset Chamber. It's a classic preset. Burkasti. It's like 95% there, according to Mick Wazowski and others. Like, it's pretty close. Like, he stopped using his, and that's pretty much an identity thing for him and his vocals on. And he, for recallability factor and how authentic it actually is, they killed it. So I use that Sunset Chamber. I changed the decay time on every song. I think it starts on my template at 1.8 seconds, but I'll wind up at longer or shorter.
So real quick, why change? Explain to people why you changed the decay time of a reverb.
Tempo.
That's great. That's exactly.
Tempo and how dense the production already is. If the production is too dense, you don't want anything long clouding it up. You want that shit to feel poppy and fresh and dancing. And if something is more open, you might want a long, dark, lush verb that creates some mystery in the background and fills space. But yeah, tempo and density. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Seventh Heaven, I know at least recently you've liked the Valhalla delay, which I've been having fun with.
Valhalla tape delay, I really, really like. I have a quarter note, an eighth note, and a half note in the template for different purposes. With different
do you process them at all? Do you process them?
I filter, but I filter, and I'll usually put like an Uber mod on with some sort of phaser or chorus or some modulation on them.
Modulation and delay is a great classic thing. It's those like Roland chorus echoes, tape echoes. They all have weird sort of modulation and wobble to them, which some delays have built in. But it's cool to
just do something more.
The question right on the chat there: how do you keep layered reverbs from clouding up in a mix? A big part of it is delay time, and how things are pre-delay and decay.
Yeah, pre-delay and decay time. Pre-delay. I'm a long pre-delayer. I would identify as a long pre-delayer. 40 milliseconds kind of shit.
Yeah. And it's a big part of it depends on tempo too. So how things are kind of slapping and moving. So decay time, how much delay you have, pre-delay on reverbs, how much like echo, chorus echo type delay, all really affect the tempo and the feel of the song and how things are running into each other.
Then I have the two other things. It's a very small template. So the Burkasti, those three delays, and then I have another reverb, which is the Goodhertz Mega Verb. And it's a very affected verb. It's very like dense and distorted and long. It's like, it starts at 4 seconds, but I feel like it's longer than 4 because it has some saturation built in that just kind of keeps the tail up. And that's for throws. That's for like ad-lib throws or some more wild shit.
The Travis Scott.
The Travis Scott, exactly. So that kind of thing I just have. That might change, and I might do another version of it. But if I want to free flow and just hear that idea, I send it to that really quick just so I can have that vibe. I might come back and change it, but that's like the vibe setter for the throw.
Can I just throw one thing in with this, which is a Waves plugin? So plug your ears. The Waves True Reverb has a Millennium Verb preset that goes on forever and ever. Yeah, so it's things like that, like
Millennium.
Everybody should. It's a great tool that should be in everybody's bag. Having your like absurdly long reverb for a throw, for a clap, the
Millennium Verb is a bit too hi-fi for me. It sounds like really clean. I think that's why I changed it to this. It has more distortion control built in the plugin. That's I think why I like it. But yeah, you could take the Millennium Verb and put a Saturn or something or a Decapitator and get some vibe on it. But the preset itself, Millennium Verb, always felt a little sterile to me. So I was always looking for another tool. But exactly, that's what that replaced. And then the last thing is the H3000 Micro Shift preset, which is, plus and minus 9 cents on
each side.
On either side, and then I have 3 different preset starts that are 3, 6, and 9. So the standard one, the default is 9, and I have a 6 and a 3 preset as well. That gives me a little bit more flexibility over like how delayed and how out of tune things are. Maybe the doubles want to be more of a 3, and the ad-libs want to be a 9. Maybe the guitar wants to be a 6, so I'll change that accordingly. But I have one that's there always.
How much are you Great. How much are you using that for a thickness versus stereo? Do you ever use that and keep it mono? So I think of like
always stereo.
It's basically to mildly stereoize something.
I have a very large dip at about 500 to 700 hertz, like really deep. So I'm not getting more of that buildup in the mid range. So it's more of a hollow sounding wide thing. So it's very out of the way of the mono. It's the complete opposite. It's fully wide and lows and highs. Like so big smiley bass. Plug-in or hardware? Great question. I rented the hardware for the Khalid album years ago, and we A-B'd it. Yeah, and we A-B'd it, and it's a digital piece of gear. It's the same. It just used the plug-in. It was like it wasn't worth buying, for the recallability, and we had to print it back in every time. The plug-in sounds great. The Eventide one, I don't know what other ones there are. I use the actual Eventide one, which is the same.
Yeah, somebody asked, that's just on vocals. I think you just said you'll use it on vocals, but also on guitars and keyboards.
Guitars. But I have one in the template that's for vocals specifically, just for the widening effect with that EQ on it. But I use that a lot.
And I wanted to point one thing out there that you said, which people may have missed and actually said about a few of these things. There is a lot of EQing and filtering going on when adding vocal effects, whether it's reverb, delays, but especially like the H3000. Always. If you're stereoizing something, you're going to run into phase shit. Anytime you're delaying something, you're pitching something, there are going to be weird phase relationships. Oftentimes that's part of the cool sound. And of course, doing slight delays and slight pitching is how you get chorus and phaser and flanger and all of that. But if you're just trying to widen a vocal, there's very subtle ways you can mess with the delay and the pitch, and then EQ, and you add air, you add mid-range, you can add different amounts of stereoization.
Yeah,
and so that's an important thing.
Put it this way, I would be a little bit careful with redundant frequencies in wideners and verbs and effects. I don't want the same frequencies in the effects that I do in the dry signal. So that's how I would consider it more conceptually. If I have a vocal that's really aggressive in 2K, I don't want that in the reverb. I want that. I want the higher frequencies. Maybe I want the 4K. Maybe the brightness is not coming from the lead, from the dry. It's coming from the effects. So there's not double up. You're not doubling up on frequencies. And then I think that's a good, clean way to think about what we're talking about for people that are messing with adding. Anything you add, you have to understand that there's going to be some subtraction that needs to happen, because you're just going to be doubling up on things. Anything in parallel is another version of what was already there. And if you already liked what was there, you might not want that much more of it, because you've already sculpted that. Like, I always mix the vocal dry first. No matter what the genre is, I get my vocal mix without reverbs on. Like, I just did this thing, and
that's a good one.
The artist brought up to me, she's like, I kind of like the slap delay that we put on, but I'm also like kind of down for it to be bone dry. And I was like, oh my God, when I started mixing it, like I mixed it bone dry first, and it just sounded a little bit more unique. And then we kind of came up with this, like, oh, in the chorus, it's actually really nice to go to the slap delay here, or maybe we do it for the pre-chorus and then, in the chorus back to dry. Like, we can now mess around with that because I've made the vocal sound confident without any effects. So that's kind of my go-to in general. But most of the time, the effects wind up going back on. I just like to EQ and make those moves on the dry vocal.
Absolutely. And it's the two things I want to point out from what you said is, when talking about time-based effects, it's important to manipulate both the frequencies that are coming back, because you're going to be building things up, and the time. I mean, they're time-based effects. So not just how long is the delay or how long is the reverb, but what does the tail feel like? Is it more gated? Is there a pre-delay? How many delays are coming off your, Valhalla tape delay, and what happens to the delays? Are they full audio signal? Do they get smaller in frequency range? All these things are important and worth playing with. Depend on the tempo of your song, depend on the style of music. They're all elements that, again, the reason why you're good at this is you've spent a lot of time and you know all of the variables, or many of the variables anyway.